Tech companies have been accused of exploiting labor and profiting off of conflict minerals in the DRC. Here's how they're getting away with it in a chilling case. In a lawsuit, the plaintiffs, which consist of former child minors, guardians of former child minors but who are still children, and legal representatives of a state of former child minors who are now dead, allege that the 5 big tech companies, that is Apple, Alphabet, which is a parent company of Google, Microsoft, Dell, and Tesla, were involved in a nefarious global cobalt supply chain that benefited of child labor in the DRC cobalt mines. The plaintiffs painted the picture of the abysmal working conditions on the cobalt mines, which include suffering from tunnel collapses and other dangerous mining operations that left plaintiffs with injuries, some paralyzed and others disfigured. They also claim that they were also held in a death cycle, as the agents would offer them food only to subtract the food from the earnings, leaving them in a cycle of forced servitude to earn a living. The 5 tech companies have been sued under the Victims Protection Reauthorization Act of 2008, which the plaintiff seeks to hold them liable for directly participating or knowingly benefiting from the global cobalt supply chain that depends on forced labor, which is a federal violation. The plaintiffs allege that the cobalt supply chain consisted of an intricate web of corporate entities, suppliers, and their subsidiaries. They unraveled the identities of these companies that supplied cobalt to the tech companies. These suppliers include Glencore, Huayu, and the Eurasian Resources Group. The lawsuit alleges that the Glencore has a subsidiary which it controls, that is the Katanga Mining Limited, that is in a joint venture with state-owned Gesha Mines, and a formed Kamoto Copper Company that supplies cobalt to Glencore and then seeks to sell it to Umicore, which refines the cobalt and allegedly sells it to Apple, Alphabet, and Microsoft. As for Huayu, they allegedly control Congo Dongfa Mining, which then supplies cobalt to allegedly Dell and Microsoft. And lastly, the Eurasian Resources Group, which has control of its subsidiary Metalcoal SA, which allegedly supplies cobalt to Tesla. The plaintiffs further allege that the tech companies own 80 to 85% of the cobalt supply chain globally, and therefore could prohibit or exercise control over the use of forced labor. The plaintiffs thus allege that the tech companies violated the TVPR Act, as they were involved indirectly through benefiting off of labor in the cobalt supply chain in DRC. 2. That they also had knowledge and benefited of the illegal activity by participating in the cobalt supply chain. Lastly, that they offered substantial assistance through aiding, abetting the suppliers or their subsidiaries in the illegal cobalt supply chain. However, the District Court and the Federal Court of Appeals both dealt a huge blow to the plaintiffs by dismissing their lawsuit by claiming that the plaintiffs had failed to prove that the tech companies participated in a venture, thus benefiting off the forced labor. This is because the plaintiffs failed to prove that the tech companies had a shared enterprise with the suppliers, or that they had any control over the mines, or that they had any interest, share in profits, or share in risk with the suppliers. Further, they also failed to prove the specified amount of cobalt mined and purchased from DRC by these tech companies as opposed to other global players. Therefore, the courts held that merely participating in a buyer-seller transaction does not mean that the tech companies participated in an unlawful venture. The tech companies, however, in clinging to a redeemable quality, formed the Fair Cobalt Alliance that requires these cobalt suppliers, such as Glencore, to monitor and prevent children working at cobalt artisanal mines and offer child remediation practices, such as reintegrating the children into schools and offering psychosocial support. Further, the tech companies must also abide by the OECD due diligence guidelines for responsible supply chain of mineral resources.